This is a bonus story because people need to see this. When I tell you ain't no rest for the wicked, this is a perfect example. Senator Alyssa Slotkin, she was interviewed on Breaking Points earlier this morning. So if you see this, you'll probably see this tomorrow, and that will be Wednesday. But she was on Breaking Points early Tuesday morning. And what I want you to know before we get into this interview, something that Krystal made very clear here is that Senator Slotkin contacted Krystal and Saagar and asked to come onto the show. They didn't invite her. That's important. That matters. Why do you think Senator Slotkin contacted them and asked if she can come on? Well, let's get into the conversation, ladies and gentlemen, and I think you'll find out why. I think that Krystal and Saagar, well, mainly more so Krystal, they really held Alyssa Slotkin's feet to the fire. Like, I will say this, I think Krystal did a really good job. I really do. I was a little nervous. Like, when at first I was like, are they gonna go soft on Alyssa? But no, she did a really good job, like going after and calling her out to her face. But the question is, why does Alyssa Slotkin, why did she contact them to go onto that show? Do you know who Alyssa Slotkin really is? This is a former CIA analyst. Let's get into it, folks.
What's going on?
So let's talk a little bit more about that.
But I think it's important, right? If you're going to push on me, then I think like there's one of us that's had an election and had to appeal to my voters and win. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that Mr. Mamdani won. Or actually, I didn't know his name. I didn't know much about him until he won. But because I think this issue is motivating people in a very visceral and personal way.
Yeah.
But it's not the only issue that my voters in Michigan care about.
Of course.
And the online world is extremely, extremely focused on this, but that doesn't always represent the majority. And I think if I can push back, like if we're out on the road every day in Michigan when I'm there. In some communities, that issue is the number one issue, 100%. And like, I mean, up till this morning, right? Like people texting my phone and talking about a plan, some of the things we're working on. But I go outside the Detroit area, it's not in the top 40.
But Senator, it's not just a political issue, it's also a moral issue is what I'm trying to get to. So let's talk about those, calling of balls and strikes, if you will. So first of all, do you accept that Israel has a policy of enforced famine and starvation in the Gaza Strip?
I think I literally put my name on a letter yesterday or last night that says like a policy of starvation, people are starting to starve. And in general, I mean, I served in places like Ramadi and Fallujah. I watched in 2004 and 2005, Al-Qaeda terrorists drag American citizens behind a vehicle until they died, right? Like horrible, and then string them up like a lynching.
Okay.
We still had a responsibility to get aid into Fallujah.
Pause. So let me explain something here. Alyssa Slotkin served there as a member of the CIA. That's the part she leaves out. This woman is a former CIA analyst. And it's not like I was in the CIA and I became a CIA whistleblower. Hell no. She's not like whistleblower-ish. No, she was former CIA. And you are going to witness her use CIA talking points throughout this interview. But I thought was really interesting is like Krystal didn't fall for it. Alyssa Slotkin came onto the show and she invited herself. She invited herself to come onto that show because she knows that Breaking Points has a diverse audience in the respect that there are conservatives that watch it to get Saagar's point of view, right? And then there are progressives and maybe some liberals that watch it to get Krystal and Ryan's point of view. And I think conservatives also watch to get what's her name? Emma. Elizabeth. Damn it. To get her point of view too. You guys know what I'm talking about. So they do have like that diverse audience where you got people on different sides that are watching it because they have Emily. Thank you, Skylar. Emily. Because they have like different perspectives. So she went on there because she wants to try to change the narrative. She wants to get her side of the narrative, particularly on Israel, because that's what they spent most of the time talking about, to that audience. She came on there to try to get them to still have some type of faith or some type of support for the state of Israel, for the existence of Israel. And if you look at the numbers that I've already showed you before, the new polling shows the majority of American voters, Netanyahu has a negative 28 approval rating. The majority of Americans are not for supporting Israel, not just what's happening in Gaza, but supporting Israel in general. And that is why Alyssa contacted them to go on that show. They also have 1.55 million subscribers. So they have a large viewership. That's why she went on there. That's why she contacted them. This piece is important. She reached out to them. They didn't reach out to her. And Krystal says that very early on in the interview. Let's continue.
Despite the fact that we were fighting Al-Qaeda cells in Fallujah, and I have been clear about that.
So this is a crime against humanity. Forced starvation is a crime against humanity.
The occupying power has a responsibility to get aid into the war zone. Period.
So
by the law of war.
Stop here for a second. Did everybody see what this woman just did? This woman just said the occupying power has a responsibility to get the aid in. Before we even get to getting the aid in, let's fucking stop with occupying power. She just admitted to the whole audience that Israel is occupying Gaza. So then the question comes is this: if you just admitted to everyone that they're occupying Gaza, why the hell are you supporting a state that's occupying a group of people? I don't, because to me, this is common sense. She said it. Krystal and Soccer didn't say this. She said it right in front of their audience. The occupying power. So she supports occupation. Let's continue.
So in addition, do you accept that the Israeli plan, as reported by Haaretz, as discussed openly by ministers like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, as backed by the President of the United States, is forced ethnic cleansing?
I think we have, as recently as yesterday, the Prime Minister of Israel talking about forced migration into certain areas and then potentially out of the country. That is not legal. That is not on any international standard since World War II. And I've been clear about that. So I would ask for a little bit of an open mind.
Well, what I would ask is, listen, I'm a YouTuber. I have my words. That's all I have. But you're a United States Senator. Like you're not the president, but you have power. So what are you going to do? Because so far what we've seen, I mean, you voted for some of the aid that's been used to massacre children and innocents. You have backed Israel, as far as I can tell, from your voting record at almost every turn. You voted for a definition of anti-Semitism that would, codify anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. You voted as a member of the House to sanction the ICC for indicting Benjamin Netanyahu, who you just admitted is a war criminal, by your own words. So are you going to join Senator Angus King, Senator Bernie Sanders in saying no more aid to this country that is committing war crimes against innocent civilians?
I think the first...
Pause here for a second. Krystal clocked her on that, right? What are you going to do? This is the question a lot of people don't like to ask Democrats. They don't. They don't like to ask them. They want to get the interviews, but they don't want to ask them that question. Okay, what are you going to do? What is the plan? What is the strategy? And Krystal told her to her face that you have power. And she does. She's in a position the rest of us are not in. I'm not in the Senate. You're not in the Senate. The Senate has more power than the House. So yeah, that's the question. What are you going to do, Alyssa? Now she asked her about the aid. Let me show you the little spin that she gives.
Thing, if you're asking about what to do with power, and I would offer that right now Democrats own nothing in Washington. So
don't play powerless with me. You're a United States Senator. There are things you can do.
In terms of who runs our foreign policy, I just think it's interesting, right? That there was a ton of protests when Democrats were in charge.
There was a protest in Manhattan yesterday.
Okay. I think it's fair to say, just to be honest, that back and forth, like the number of protests that go on now versus before.
Well, they were part of your political coalition.
Well, that's
right?
I mean,
let me pause here for a second. CIA strategy, CIA tactic right here. Krystal asked her a very simple question. What are you going to do? Are you going to withhold aid to Israel? She goes into this tangent of something that doesn't really answer the question. She's like, well, you know, we don't really have, you know, and Krystal said, don't play powerless with me. Yeah, because you're the one that's voting. We don't get to vote on these pieces of legislation. We vote for representatives and senators to supposedly represent us, but they don't. They represent their donors. You're the ones that are voting on the pieces of legislation, not the American people. She goes into this tangent about, well, you know, the protest and da-da-da. What does that have to do with the question that you were just asked, which was, what are you going to do? Are you going to withhold aid to Israel? This is one of the tactics, the CIA tactic. Let's try to change the subject as much as possible and then kind of go on these long rants. We can even introduce our own personal experience with this as well, but we're really not going to answer your question. So Krystal was prepared for that. It appears to me that after watching this interview, Alyssa was not prepared for this conversation. And in reference to the protest, as I've said before, I don't know how many times as an activist I have to say this. In the beginning of any activist, like, you know, direct action on the ground, corporate media will cover it in the beginning. And then as time goes by, they stop covering it. This is the same thing that happened during the BLM protests. They were out there in the beginning and then they stopped covering it. And so people said, oh, I guess all the protests stopped. And that wasn't true. For those of us that were on the ground, we know the protests were still ongoing. But you would know that if you were just sitting at home watching corporate media. Same thing I will say for the pro-Palestine protests. Corporate media covered it very heavily in the beginning when there was like 500,000 people marching in DC. Remember that first really big one that a lot of people went to, and Macklemore was one of the speakers at? Right. So people have been protesting since October 7th, 2023. The problem is corporate media stopped covering it. People got their heads bashed in. People have been dragged on the streets by cops. Don't believe me? Watch Status Quo. They cover protests all the fucking time. Corporate media stopped covering those protests. So stop it with when corporate media covered the No Kings protests, you know what they didn't cover that was happening at that same time? Pro-Palestine protests in DC at the same time. A CIA tactic. Let's continue. We got more.
That's fair.
Slotkin,
That's fair.
Obviously, I'm here.
Yeah.
I was very upset over the Biden administration policy. And as you can tell, I'm very upset over the Trump administration policy.
Yeah.
So let's deal not in strawman, but me
Okay,
in
but
here
in
now.
terms of so the tools that I have, the tools that we have in general, to me, the most important thing is a pressurized campaign to get aid into people who are starving. That to me is the number one, because that's the one is urgent and today. And that,
but will you cut off aid to Israel so long as they're committing crimes against humanity?
There is a difference between a weapon to protect a country from incoming missiles versus other type. Offensive and defensive weapons are different.
So would you support?
Still doesn't answer the damn question. She's trying to pull an AOC. She's trying to convince you that it's okay to support the money to go to Israel for them to defend themselves, but not okay. Well, maybe I might withhold a little bit if it's offensive. I don't know. By the way, she doesn't anymore. She did in the beginning. She doesn't even take money from AIPAC anymore. She doing this for free. If you listen closely later on, you're going to find out why. Why? Right? Because see, people have a negative view of Israel today. More people have a negative view of it. Why does Alyssa need this place to be so protected? Why does Alyssa, let me be very clear about this, okay? We got neighborhoods right here in the United States that have zero fucking protection. And the people who are supposed to protect you, like the police, they come into those neighborhoods and they make things worse than they were before they got there. Why is it so important that this one little strip of land, why is it so important that they are so protected? We're not even protected. We're not protected here in this country. But they sending money over there to protect Israel, the people who are trying to ethnically cleanse another group of people. And Alyssa supports the existence. And that's why I said, no, Israel should not exist. And Alyssa supports it. Let's go on.
Offensive weapons ban? Like, would you stop any offensive aid to Israel?
That certainly, to me, would be a place to look, but I'm not going to cut off a blanket next sale on a defensive weapon that comes through. No.
I also reject that because, for example, if Senator Slotkin, if you were asked to support defensive weapons for Iran, defensive weapons for Russia, you wouldn't back that.
No, but Iran, but
they're defensive. They're just protecting civilians, right? So how is it different?
But because Israel's being shot at. I mean,
well, so is
Russia. So is Iran. Yeah. So is Russia.
Ukraine's shooting at Russia right now. Right?
I'm sorry. This is the difference between allies, partners, and adversaries.
Why is
Why are you an ally with a genocidal state? So you see, this woman, she really exposed her whole ass. Because let me tell you something. This is what it really comes down to. That was a great question to ask. So if Russia wanted that, if China wanted that, if Iran wanted that, would you support it? Well, no, because they're not our allies. This is going to be the downfall of the West. Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't have genocidal allies. I don't have genocidal allies. And I said this before, any black politician in DC that is supporting Israel, you kind of look like Django to me right now, man. That's what you look like to me. Why the hell would you support the people, racist, genocidal people? Because they all took money to go along with it to further their careers. She really exposed herself in this interview.
Ally then. What are they doing right now, which just makes it an ally?
I think allied relationships, just like Lithuania right now, like an allied relationship or a partner relationship is a long-standing relationship of information sharing and diplomacy. And that is, to me, it's not a like every day we decide Lithuania is our ally or not. We're allied or not. And sometimes we have big breaks with allies. Right? Sometimes we have difficult moments with allies. Sometimes it goes the wrong way with allies. But an allied relationship is a long-term relationship.
It's hard for me to understand why we should ally. Like, I'm sure you believe in or claim to believe in liberal human rights. Why would we ally with a nation that is committing a genocide and live streaming it?
Can I ask literally, like this, I think about this from the mirror image way, because I do not support the things that Donald Trump is doing, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm an American. So
hold on to that, but I'm an American part, because that's another CIA tactic. I might get to that in a second.
I want other countries to look at America and be like, we can't stand Donald Trump. So we're going to end any longstanding relationship we have with the American people. We're going to cut off any support we give them on information sharing or intelligence sharing. Like, we are not just our elected leaders. And I think that's the thing that's been lost in the conversation.
No, let me pause here for a second. Problem is, Benjamin Netanyahu is not president of the United States. Donald Trump is president of the United States. Her logic there to me makes absolutely zero sense. I feel like she's a fish out of water. I don't think she was ready for this. This is not CNN. This is not MSNBC. This is not Fox News. Like, you went on to a YouTube show. Maybe she thought she'd have a better chance here because, Krystal Sager came from Rising, and Rising is corporate media. Maybe that's what she thought. But no. Like, this is not good. That comment there about allyships, these things fall apart all the time. They're like, well, it's a long-standing thing. Relationships end. People break up. People get together. It doesn't always stay this way. Doesn't always.
So B'Tselem and another Israeli human rights organization joined the Global Consensus, Amnesty International, some 800 scholars. There was a piece from an Israeli scholar in the New York Times in saying this is a genocide. Do you accept, even Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday came out and said it's a genocide. Do you accept that? And if you do, I mean, what responsibility does a United States senator have for, this is a nation that, you know, we send every year billions of dollars to aid that you have, you know, voted for and supported. Like, what responsibility does a United States senator have to prevent genocide and to stop genocide that we see ongoing?
We have a responsibility up till today to ensure that food is getting in.
Is it
so
a
that
genocide?
People don't starve. I don't know that I'd use that term,
Why?
but it is violating the law of war.
Why don't you use the term though?
Because I think, you know, it's, to me, do I think it's ethnic cleansing, which is what I think of in genocide? I don't know if it meets that definition.
They're
But
announcing
didn't you
it.
say it earlier that it was ethnic cleansing? You said that they wanted to force it. I mean, this is open from the Israeli government. Like, they're saying it. Their
And from
Minister
Trump,
of National
too.
Security, they come out and they're like, we don't need shells. We need shells, not food. And we need to encourage migration. Like, they're saying
you're
Yeah.
not going to get me to
Yeah.
support what the Israeli
Yeah.
government is saying right now. I think the point I was trying to make is it's not just about, like, we have relationships with nations over time, regardless of who their leaders are. We have really tough moments. We have easier moments, but that doesn't, so I'm not willing to say that, like, I hate everything ever.
Sure,
into
but
the
so
future.
even if you,
Let's pause here for a second. Let me make something very clear. You know why she won't call it a genocide? You know why? She's like, well, I don't know if it meets that definition. By the way, that's a trick that a lot of them are using. I don't know if it meets the definition when these people are actually starving and I can see their bones and all the stuff on social media. You know why she won't call it that? Because it is being done by Israel. And I told you before about the white minority. If Israel is committing a genocide against another group of people, people will start to question their priority status in a so-called minority group. The white minority is always going to be an issue for other marginalized groups because they are the priority at the top of that list. They're not at the bottom. They're at the top of the list. If she admits that, yes, Israel is committing a genocide against the Palestinian people, that also would change the view of Israel, even though that's happening anyway. But then that would, once you have people, more politicians on record saying it's a genocide, that changes the game for this so-called minority status. That changes everything, everything. That is a failure for Zionism, right? That changes everything. Question is, why does Alyssa want to protect it so much? This is someone who was former CIA analyst, who later went on to become a politician. She's in the system. She's a part of it. When people talk about taking on the deep state, she was the deep state. She was it. And she ain't against it. That's what you see what's controlling Alyssa, right? Alyssa wants Israel to be there too. Alyssa still want to be able to go to Israel, probably live in a kibbutz just like Bernie Sanders did. Alyssa want to be able to go there and get her home too. This is the stuff that's not being said, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be damned. You cannot let this go. Some of these politicians, they want to be able to go over there and they want to be able to get their home too, which is taken from a Palestinian family. Little bit more here.
Except that they're committing a genocide, you still wouldn't cut off their aid?
I think that defensive aid and offensive aid are different things. And I think at this point,
So
what
if
they're
Nazi
doing
Germany,
every single day
if
is
Nazi
doing,
Germany said we want defensive aid, I mean, it's just, you have to see where they're all weapons that are being shipped. You know, in
they're
another
not using
context,
the weapons that they're using right now. I mean, to be honest, if you look at what's happening on the ground, the military part of this conflict is, for the most part, over. What they are doing,
Senator,
every single day is around aid, and they are hurting people
they have
around
slaughtered
the
over
delivery of
1,000
aid.
people who were starving people just trying to get aid.
That is not that's not high intensity bombs. That's not the weapons that that we were talking about 2 years ago. It's just not. I'm sorry. Every single day, the military reports that I read, they are traditional, like this is a military that has a bad strategy. It is not the bombs that we were seeing 2 years ago.
It's not a military that has a bad strategy. The strategy is forced starvation and ethnic cleansing. That's their strategy. And they're accomplishing it very effectively with the full backing of the United States government, including, sadly, Democrats.
Well,
and so a couple more questions that I know you have to run. I'm curious why you condemned Rashida Tlaib for using the rally chant, from the river to the sea, something she said for her evokes equal rights. And you have not condemned Randy Fine, who said that Gazans should, quote, starve away, who floated that the Gaza Strip should be nuked, who called Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Zoran as well, called them Muslim terrorists. Where is the concern over him?
I have no problem condemning Randy Fine, who I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Another CIA tactic. All of a sudden, when you didn't do your due diligence where you should have, it's all of a sudden, I don't know this person. You're a senator. You don't know who. How the hell do you not know who Randy Fine is? I don't work in DC. I'm not a senator. I'm not a House representative. I know who Randy Fine is. And we're all supposed to sit here and believe that you don't know who this guy is who said, let all those people in Gaza starve. We know who he is, but you don't know who he is. So you see what Alyssa is doing here. I don't know. I would say that if I knew who he was, but you didn't say it. That's the point. When backed up against the wall, try to find ways to get yourself out of the situation while claiming, well, I didn't know. One more part here.
I don't know who that person is. I have no problem condemning someone who talks like that.
Senator, we have to ask your last question because your staff is telling us. Do you think AIPAC should register as a foreign lobby?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that I know plenty of people who think they should. I don't.
It's kind of a cop-out answer, don't you think?
I mean, yeah. I literally, I just guess I'd have to look at the definition. I certainly have had my tough moments with that organization. And
another tactic, I got to look at the definition. She said this about genocide. She's saying it about whether AIPAC should register as a foreign agent. This is another thing that they do. Like, I don't know if it meets the definition of genocide. I don't know. I have to look at the definition. Again, it's when backed against the wall, always defer to, I don't know. Now, apparently she did take money from AIPAC earlier on, but she had since moved away from it. I want to get to the part where Krystal talks about being a mom. Hold on.
You do the show. I really do my best to try to uphold, basic human rights, Palestinian humanity, oppose the killing of innocent civilians wherever that happens. And I have to tell you, I feel really guilty that I'm not doing enough. I think all the time about, I'm a mom. I think all the time about those moms who can't feed their babies. Mm-hmm. Those babies are starving to death. And I just want to know, you're a United States Senator. You did vote for some of the bombs that were dropped on refugee camps. When kids have been sniped in the head, tents firebombed, people set on fire. The entire Gaza Strip turned into rubble. And now we're seeing these emaciated bodies of babies starving to death every day. And I know
what you can do.
Does it eat you up? Does it eat you up? Do you think, what more could I do? Do you regret any of your votes? Do you regret
let me tell you what I was working on this morning. A group of Jewish rabbis and Muslim community leaders came together with a proposal that we are working on just getting, if we can't get other aid in, at least get baby formula and nutritional supplements for children in. Let that be kind of a green light, never has a problem. No one's trying to eat baby formula other than a baby, right? That is the proposal that I've been working on all night and this morning. So in terms of what we're trying to do, there's not a moment that goes by that this isn't something that I'm working on and something that my own community, not online, but my own community has practical things that they want to do. They're willing to raise the money. They're willing to buy the formula. They're willing to do whatever we need to do to get it shipped in. That's how I spend my time.
But you're not.
Let me make something very clear. Alyssa remind me of some of those people like back in the day, you know, it's like they make these comments as though they think that when they make these comments that it shows that they're really trying to help the people that are oppressed. And it actually just makes you look even more pathetic. For you to sit up there and say that we're trying to get in at least baby formula, that right there, Miss Senator Slotkin, tells us just how much you care about those people and how much you think their life is worth. That you would reduce their life to at least the baby formula, that you would reduce it to that. Who is going to raise the babies if the parents are dead? How many orphans are in Gaza right now? Who is going to raise the babies if there are no adults alive to raise them? And I'm comparing this to some of the things I kind of heard people say before. Is like, you know, when you talk about people that grow up poor, some of the things I hear from these Alyssa types that are just kind of like, well, we gave them the option of, I don't know, like an after school program. Maybe that'll help them out. We gave them that. Or the ones that were like, well, what more do these Black people want? They're not slaves anymore. That type of shit. That's what it reminds me of. That's what this reminds me of. How dare you? Just get the baby formula in. Not once does she even say or acknowledge that the people are being killed as they go to get the food. By the way, this happened under Biden as well. Many of us in independent media covered it, while Alyssa Slotkin turned the other way. While they were parading Kamala Harris out here in front of you, while they were telling you that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee, even though he could barely figure out where he was at the time, this happened under Biden and Kamala too. Where was Alyssa Slotkin? Yeah, I can't with this. So this whole idea of, well, you know, if we can just get that baby formula in, she has reduced the self-worth of the Palestinian people to, let's just give them some baby formula. Are you living off, your family living off just baby formula, Alyssa? No. It ends this part here.
Willing to cut off aid to Israel.
To me, that to me is the most effective thing that I can do today.
This is not a question. Your staff is telling us you absolutely have to go. So we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming.
Senator.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was not good for Alyssa. And I'll show you this because we got to get into it, right? This woman, look at this. Let me show you who Alyssa Slotkin really is. I told you she was CIA. She was CIA. Look at this. A member of the Democratic Party, Slotkin was a CIA analyst and Department of Defense official, ending her career in the field as the acting assistant secretary of defense for international security affairs. She was CIA. And there are people who have been in the CIA and then they become whistleblowers. She's not one of them. She's not one of them. This is the tactics I was telling you about, right? Now, it's called Advice from the CIA, How to Sabotage Your Workplace, but it can be applied in other conversations. And this is what I want you guys to see. Look at some of the things that they do. Nick, my comrade Nick from RBN has shown this multiple times on RBN. And I'm showing it to you guys because I just want you to see stuff they do, right? Check this out. Insist on doing everything through channels. Never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. Alyssa told Krystal Ball and Sagar that she signed on to a letter. Ooh. Alyssa told Krystal Ball, she was like, well, we just had a meeting about such and such, and we are trying to work to do blah, blah, blah. Notice all of these things are things that take time, and it's never anything that is quick and immediate that can be done immediately. Like, I don't know, cutting off aid to Israel. They don't want to do things that work quickly. They want to propose things that is going to take time. That's a tactic. They are stalling. Here's another one. Here we go. Make speeches, talk as frequently as possible and at great length. Illustrate your points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. Never hesitate to make a few appropriate patriotic comments. Bam. What did Alyssa do when she was sitting there talking to Krystal? She said, I remember when I was there and we had Al-Qaeda take American hostages. This conversation was not about Al-Qaeda, but that's her offering her personal experience. Then she goes on to say, listen, I'm an American. That's the patriotic part. I'm telling you guys, this is so like, when possible, refer all matters to committees for further study and consideration. Attempt to make the committees as large as possible, never less than 5. Listen, we are meeting with people. We are meeting, we're getting together. I just had a such and such with such and such. We are having these discussions. By the way, this is another thing that is done to make sure that we don't get tangibles here in the United States for working class people in this country. They defer it to a study. Oftentimes when a bill is sent to a study, there's no actual study happening. It is just a way for them to get you out of their damn face and make you think that they're doing something that they're not really doing. The most quick response would be to end the aid to Israel. That's it. Stop it. Just end the aid. That's it. Then they can't attack nobody no more. They won't be starving no more babies, all that type of stuff. That is the quick response. But the CIA tactic and strategy does not want a quick response. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. Haggle over precise wordings of communications, minutes, or resolutions. Notice how she kept bringing up definition. Now it applies to the workplace, but you can see them use this in other conversations. Notice how she was like, I don't know if it meets that definition. She said that twice about 2 different issues during that interview. Goes on to say here's another one. Advocate caution, be reasonable, and urge your fellow conferees to be reasonable and avoid haste, which might result in embarrassments or difficulties later on. What did she say earlier on when she came onto the show? I am trying to get you to be reasonable, to hear this side, to understand this. That's why at the very beginning, when I told you, Krystal asked her, you contacted us. What are you expecting to get out of this? She contacted them and asked to come onto the show. They didn't contact her. She went on there with a mission to speak to their 1.55 million subscribers to try to get them to be reasonable about Israel. Yes, FM is right. All anti-reparation talking points as well. Right. Be reasonable. Go look at the study. Here's another one. I think I skipped right here. Refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. Congress is notorious for doing that. She brings up, I just met with this person and we talked about this. We're meeting with this and we're talking about that. The point is, it prevents you from moving forward. Everything you're hearing right now, we just got to get the aid in. Isn't that the same thing you heard Kamala Harris and Joe Biden say when they were in office? We got to get the aid in. We got to get to a ceasefire. We got to get to this. They hold the key to that. Ronald Reagan revealed that when he was president. They control the weapons that go to Israel. They can stop all of this with one phone call. Biden could have done that. Trump can do that now. And all these senators and these congressmen and women, they are all playing along with the game. So that's why I continue to say there is no working with Israel. This is something where me and Shama disagreed on the show. I said, hell's no. It is a sick culture, a sick society that sits there. The majority of Israelis in Israel, and the polls show this, want the Palestinian people gone. And then you have the US government sitting up there backing their genocidal project. Two peas in a pod. This one is a big one. Be worried about the propriety of any decision. Be worried about the propriety of any decision. Raise the question of whether such action as is contemplated lies within the jurisdiction of the group, whether it might conflict with policy of some higher echelon. What did Alyssa tell Krystal? Well, I don't have power. We're not in power right now. There's nothing we can do. We can't do anything. Isn't that the same thing Hakeem Jeffrey said? See how they move? It prevents anything from getting done. It is intentional. When they told you, we got to get a ceasefire, we got to get this done. Remember they kept telling you this? They could have stopped it at any time. The cat fell out the bag after Trump won. They revealed to you, to your face. They told you, Kamala and Biden never asked for a ceasefire. Never. So the immediate solution, which is the best solution, they don't take that route. They take a route that is longer, and they will refer to it as strategic. This is when you hear them say it's about strategy, that type of thing. They will do that to make you think they are working on something and there's nothing else they can do quickly in the short term when they can. Former CIA analyst, and she got her ass handed to her. Well. No rest for the wicked. That's why she had to come on there. No rest for the wicked. She got to come on there and protect Israel. Let me go onto this show because Israel's losing support. Let me try to win some of these viewers back and get them to be reasonable. Nobody should sit here and be reasonable during a genocide. No one. None. Nada. Period. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.